FBI agent John Crawford is with his partner Tom Lone at a Union Wharf in San Francisco. They're supposed to be on duty.
3.
But for some reason, Crawford wants to have a quick smoke. Tom asks him if his wife is aware, and Crawford tells him that he's a man of his house, so he doesn't need to tell his wife anything. Tom teases him about it and promises not to tell on him. While they're talking, gunshots can be heard in the background. Tom then asks Crawford how many shooters he's counted. Crawford thinks there should be about 5 to 6, but Tom is certain that they were tipped off, and he suggests that they take a look. On the count of 3, both men rush into the scene of action, where they find out that many men have been brought down. While scouting the area, Crawford finds the casing of a titanium bullet lying on the floor. Suddenly, a shootout breaks out between both FBI agents and the rest of the men. When they think they're done clearing the place, Crawford is shot in the arm by a certain man in black. Tom sees the figure about to deliver the final shot, so he fires at the stranger, who gets hit by Tom's stray bullet. The man falls straight into the water while Tom rushes to help Crawford. Crawford, however, feels that the man is still alive, but Tom is certain that the guy took a shot to the face and could possibly not have survived. Crawford then informs Tom that there was talk from the Yakuza about hiring a rogue contractor to deal with the triads, and that rogue probably escaped tonight. Tom claims that the rogue is just a myth.
I heard it was 5.
But Crawford shows him the titanium shell, saying it is known as Rogue's signature. Just then, the police arrive, so Tom and Crawford immediately identify themselves. Much later, the families of the two agents are planning a get-together, where they will be grilling steak and catching up on lost times, when an intruder in a mask sneaks into Tom's household. While Tom is in the bathroom, the trespasser attacks and kills Tom's wife and daughter.
Diane, they hear yet?
When Tom comes out to investigate the noise, he gets shot, and their house is immediately set ablaze. Later that day, Crawford and his wife, Jen, are on their way to Tom's house when Jen notices the ambulance and cops surrounding the house. She wakes Crawford up and parks just up ahead. Crawford then asks her to stay in the car with their son, Daniel, while he goes to investigate. He confirms a body that's being moved to be Tom's and almost loses it. He turns to look at Jen, and she immediately gets the hint that they've lost their friends. Crawford then proceeds into the building, only to find another titanium shell left lying on the floor.
Ghost stories.
Way to clean up after a crime. So burning the building wasn't even necessary since Crawford now knew who the culprit was. 3 years later, at Club Zero in the Yakuza district, Rogue storms the nightclub, shooting everything and everyone in his path, before using a bomb to eliminate the Yakuzas who run the place. Later, surrounds the area to carry out investigations when Crawford enters the place and starts giving orders. The agent then asks him on whose authority he's giving orders, so Crawford's assistant tells him that they'll be taking over the case under the authority of the mayor. They report to Crawford that they found one of the Yakuzas still alive, but in bad shape.
A bunch of Japanese mumbo-jumbo.
However, neither of them is able to speak Japanese, so they can't make out what he's been muttering. Fortunately for Crawford, he knows his stuff. That means he speaks Japanese, so he offers to interrogate the man. Sadly, Crawford isn't the type to beat around the bush, so he squeezes out the information he needs from the man. Literally, he informs his assistant that the guy only mumbled some Japanese mumbo-jumbo and mentioned a vengeful spirit. As they're about to leave, he once again finds a trademarked titanium shell, like the one from 3 years ago. The next day, Crawford wakes up in his office to a call from his wife, Jen. She's calling to remind him about his son's first basketball game this Friday. However, Crawford tries to reason with her that he's so close to catching Tom's killer. Jen then reminds him that it's been 3 years and that his obsession with this has cost them their marriage.
Look, your obsession with this man has cost you our marriage.
Later, Crawford has a meeting with his team where they talk about why Rogue would kill the Yakuzas if he worked for them. Crawford then suggests that Rogue might be working for Shiro Yanagawa, the most powerful man in San Francisco. The team then informs Crawford about a Chinese triad boss under Yanagawa named Shiro Chang. Chang is known to be selling every heirloom in the Ming Dynasty to collectors, and now he's down to 2 statuette horses. Meanwhile, Rogue dresses up and goes to a mansion in Marin where Shiro Chang lives. Chang wants to believe that he can trust Rogue to get him the horses, which he would be stealing from Yanagawa to restore his family's honor. He even offers Rogue 2 men called the Tai brothers to support him. But after Rogue rejects them, he orders them to keep an eye on Rogue. In Japan, in the Yakuza estate, Shiro Yanagawa is having a duel with one of his boys when he sees his daughter and gets distracted for a moment. This distraction costs him the sleeves of his kimono know. While the young man goes on his knees to beg, Shiro pretends not to care. But as an example that the Yakuza boss is not to be messed with, Shiro chops off the young man's ear and leaves. Later, Shiro is seen walking with his daughter, Kira. They're having a discussion about the sales of the statuette horses. Shiro reveals to his daughter that he doesn't trust their men in San Francisco, so he wants Kira to oversee the sales. Kira, however, is bummed that she thought she would stay and dedicate more time to her role in the clan, but she accepts anyway and promises not to let her father down. Meanwhile, Agent Crawford arrives at a mahjong parlor in search of someone named Benny. There, he finds out that the parlor's basement is being used for secret cage fights. He spots Benny and asks to see him in private. Benny then takes him to a room where Crawford expects to get some information. Apparently, Benny has a lead on Rogue, who seems to be finishing everyone off he's associated with.
Yeah, so much for Homeland Security, right?
He also informs Crawford that 2 out of the 3 plastic surgeons who worked on Rogue's face are now gone, and in the case of the 3rd surgeon, he might still be alive. Crawford then asks Benny to keep an eye out in case he resurfaces. On the other hand, the Yakuzas in San Francisco have loaded the horses and readied the escorts to take the package to the expected location. On their way, they're intercepted by Rogue's men disguised as cops. They apprehend the Yakuzas with the help of a corrupt police captain and gather them in one place before firing them all down. With a job well done, Rogue retrieves the horses and gets paid a hefty sum after delivering them to Chang. The following day, Agent Crawford and his men are at the scene for investigations. All evidence leads him to a small restaurant where he finds the police captain, who aided Rogue's men last night. The captain denies having a hand in it, but Crawford forcefully draws out the truth from him.
And you were the one who sold them out last night.
After the forceful interrogation, Crawford takes the captain outside, where he'll be taken away by police. Suddenly, the captain gets sniped from a building opposite where they're standing. Crawford, knowing fully well it's Rogue, urges his men to search the building, while he chases after Rogue himself. He manages to catch up with Rogue, but when he thinks he has him, Rogue slips away. Meanwhile, Kira finally arrives at the Yakuza's base in San Francisco. She overhears the managers discussing eliminating all of Chang's men that stole from them. She then instructs them not to do anything until her father sends instructions. Rogue calls Agent Crawford and informs him that if he wants the stolen shipment, then he should come to Warehouse 16 in 1 hour. With Chang at the warehouse, the FBI arrives with a search warrant and forces him to open the warehouse. Inside the warehouse, Crawford finds Rogue standing there silently. While the rest of the agents search the place, Crawford interrogates Rogue. He tells Rogue that his eyes are the one thing the surgeons can never change, and his actions show that he wants to take revenge for what Rogue did to Tom Lone and his family. Sadly, the FBI finds no evidence against Chang or Rogue. Crawford tells Terry that he's very sure that Rogue is the one behind Tom's death, but Terry reminds him that they can't do anything without evidence. With no choice left, Crawford lets Rogue go once again. Back in Chang's house, where Rogue now stays, the 2 men laugh over a drink as Chang asks Rogue how he knew the FBI was coming, and Rogue tells him his experience. Chang then tells him that the FBI has declared war on them, but little does he know that Rogue's cooking something up. As time goes on, Crawford spends his days tracking down the Yakuzas and anyone possible in search of Rogue. Meanwhile, Rogue continues to stay in Chang's mansion. One day, Chang's little daughter Anna sneaks up on him while he loads up his gun. He hides the gun, but the little girl keeps bugging him to play with her. Chang's wife walks in on them and asks Anna to go outside and play. She then gives Rogue a stern warning to stay away from her daughter. Later that night, Rogue disguises himself as a Yakuza riding a motorcycle to start a war between the Chinese triads and the Yakuzas. And surprisingly, the triads take the bait. Singling Chang's right-hand man out of the crowd, he finishes him off using a Yakuza sword. Chang is furious about the situation, but he chooses not to retaliate, as that's what the authorities are waiting for. He tells Rogue he will retaliate when the time is right. He also informs Rogue that more damage will be done as this goes on. So he makes Rogue promise him that should anything happen, Rogue will take care of his wife and daughter and keep them safe. At the Sai Yu tea house, the FBI surrounds the area and has the tea house under surveillance. Terry is busy checking out some ladies when he sees Shiro's worker, Takada, entering the tea house.
Oh, man.
with other Yakuza guys. Moments later, Terry notices the triad guys approaching the area. He then orders his teammate to call Crawford and some extra hands for backup. While Crawford is on his way, a shoutout breaks out. When Crawford finally arrives, only a few men are still alive. Just then, backup also arrives. Together, the FBI rounds up the rest of the men alive. Just then, Rogue starts taking sniper shots at the FBI one by one. Meanwhile, the Yakuzas, who are still alive, start to fight back. In the end, Rogue kills all the FBI except Crawford, and all the Yakuzas left in the area are also eliminated. As Crawford exits the building, he sees Rogue escaping and quickly gives chase. They both go on an epic high-speed chase through San Francisco, with Rogue toying with Crawford the entire time. Sadly, the chase comes to an end when Crawford crashes his car. The next day, Rogue calls Chang to inform him that his men raided the Yakuza district last night. He also lies about trying to stop them when he's the original mastermind behind it. Chang then hangs up after claiming that he's left with no choice. Later, Rogue goes to meet Shiro's daughter. She commends Rogue that he has done well and that her father is happy. Plot twist, Shiro's final request is not only to kill Chang, but for Rogue to bring him the heads of Chang's wife and daughter.
Why?
But Rogue asks why. Kira then tells him he shouldn't have a problem hurting women and children since he's done so before. He tries to refuse, but Kira shows him what it would result in if he did. Meanwhile, in Crawford's house, Jen wants to know why there are men outside her house with guns. Crawford then tries to calm her down, saying it's for precautionary measures. The two then get into an argument about Crawford always putting his job first, despite knowing it would put Jen and Daniel in danger. While they're at it, Benny keeps calling. When he finally takes the call, Benny informs him that he's found the third plastic surgeon in Mexico. The two of them then head to Mexico to confront the doctor, who goes by the name of Sherman. Crawford shows Sherman a picture of Rogue and wants to know if he is. Sherman then reveals that Rogue came to him 3 years ago with a torn face, supposedly after Tom had shot him. He claims that the face in the picture is what he made Rogue look like.
To me 3 years ago. His face was almost torn off.
Giving Crawford the affirmation he needs. Crawford and Benny then promise Sherman that they'll protect him and ask him to go and get anything he needs so they can leave. Back in Chang's mansion, Chang is placed at gunpoint by his assistant, who claims that despite his loyalty, Chang treated him like trash. Chang then grabs a gun from under his table and intends to shoot, but gets shot by his assistant. Just then, Rogue enters and finishes off Chang's assistant. Chang then tells Rogue that he cannot believe such a person would speak about loyalty. Rogue then tells him that his assistant was loyal to begin with before finishing Chang off. Meanwhile, some Yakuza ninjas have already initiated an attack on Chang's mansion. While Rogue makes it to Chang's wife and daughter, 2 Yakuza ninjas stand outside the window to be sure that Rogue did as told. After hearing the gunshots, they confirm the woman and child to be dead. Rogue comes out to meet the ninjas. One of them asks Rogue to take him to the body so he can retrieve the head. So Rogue tells him that he should have that honor since he eliminated them. Just then, he starts to attack the Yakuzas and brings them all down. It turns out that Rogue is a man of his word.
Yes, Mrs. Chang.
He goes back to open the doors to let Chang's wife and daughter out. He then escorts them to a car and watches as she drives off safely. Finally, Shiro himself arrives in San Francisco, and Crawford doesn't fail to pay him a visit. She reveals photos of Rogue finishing off Shiro's men and helping Chang's wife and child escape. However, Shiro denies having any ties with Rogue. Crawford then leaves him with a warning. The following day, Rogue goes to meet Shiro with the Ming horses. Shiro then offers him his payment, alongside the evidence of his betrayal. But before Rogue can retaliate, Shiro orders that he be taken away. As Rogue is escorted out, Shiro realizes that the horses are fake. Meanwhile, Rogue breaks free and attacks Shiro's men. He then explodes a bomb hidden in one of the horses' cases. As Shiro's men rush in to investigate, Rogue takes them all out one by one. He gets the chance to shoot Shiro, but he doesn't. Instead, he chooses to face Shiro in a sword fight. During their fight, it is revealed that Rogue is not the real assassin. The real assassin, who was sent to kill Tom's family, was finished off by Agent Tom that day. In order to seek revenge on Shiro, Agent Tom changed his face to match that of the assassin, Rogue. But before executing Shiro, Shiro tells him that Crawford was working for him, and because of Crawford, Tom's family died. Later, Chang's wife receives one of the Ming horses in a package with a note that reads, "Make a new life." Meanwhile, in Japan, Kira receives a package with her father's head and a note that also reads the same as that of Chang's wife. Rogue then calls Crawford and asks him to meet again at the same warehouse. There, the two get into a fight. During the fight, Rogue reveals to Crawford that he's Tom and asks him what Shiro promised for him to betray Tom. Crawford finally recognizes Tom and admits to working for Shiro back then. He said he wanted to stop, but he couldn't. He then asks for forgiveness from Tom, but Rogue tells him that Tom is dead to him now. Just then, the sniper Crawford ordered to aim for Rogue. Crawford then steps in the way, but gets shot by Rogue anyway. With his revenge successfully achieved, Rogue escapes and leaves San Francisco for good. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2007 movie War by Philip G. Atwell, starring Jet Li and Jason Statham. So how many of us weren't expecting such a twist to the story? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. And until next time.